Have you ever wondered why so many sharp, witty people suddenly start forgetting things the moment they turn 60? What if the real reason isn't aging at all, but something sitting quietly in their medicine cabinet right now, today? Before we go any further, let's make a deal. Hit subscribe, not because I'm asking nicely, but because by the end of this video, you might want to find it again so you can show it to someone you love. And tap that like button too. Think of it as flagging this video important, so it never gets buried in your feed when you need it most. I want to tell you about a woman I'll call Helen because her story shows up again and again in geriatric medicine, just with different names attached to it. Helen was 71. She still did the crossword every morning, in pen, never pencil. She remembered every grandchild's birthday without checking her phone, and she could recite her own mother's old recipes from memory, down to the exact pinch of salt. Her son used to joke that she had a sharper memory than he did. Then, about a year and a half after her doctor added one more pill to her daily routine, things began to change. She started forgetting what she had eaten for breakfast. She got lost driving home from a grocery store she had visited every week for 15 years. She asked her son the same question 3 times in one phone call, each time as if it were the first. Her family started using a word nobody wanted to say out loud: dementia. Her son told me later that the hardest part wasn't the forgetting itself, it was watching his mother notice it happening to her, and seeing the fear in her eyes when she realized she couldn't explain why. Here's the part almost nobody tells families in that moment. Helen did not have Alzheimer's. She had a medicine cabinet full of small, ordinary, completely legal pills that were quietly working against her brain, one dose at a time. When her doctor reviewed everything she was taking and carefully adjusted it, something remarkable happened. Within a few months, Helen was back to her crossword. Her son got his mother back. This is not a miracle. This is something doctors and pharmacists are beginning to understand more clearly every year, and most patients never hear a word about it. So today, I want to walk you through 9 medications, very common ones, medications that may be sitting in your bathroom cabinet right now, that research has linked to faster memory loss and a higher risk of dementia after 60. I want to be completely clear about one thing before we start. I am not telling you to stop taking any medication. Please do not do that on your own. What I am telling you is that you have a right to ask questions, a right to understand what you are putting into your body, and a right to protect your own brain. Asking questions is never dangerous. Staying silent is. And one more thing before we begin, drop a comment below right now and tell me, are you over 60 or do you have a parent who is? What medications are part of your daily routine? I read every comment, and your experience might be exactly what helps someone else watching this video today. Here's something that might surprise you. The average person over 65 fills more prescriptions in a single year now than they did across their entire 20s and 30s combined. Each one usually gets approved by a different specialist looking only at their own corner of the body. The heart doctor focuses on the heart. The bladder specialist focuses on the bladder. Nobody is specifically watching what all of it adds up to inside the brain. That gap, the space between specialists, is exactly where this problem tends to grow quietly for years before anyone notices. Let's start with the one almost everyone has in their nightstand without a second thought: diphenhydramine. You probably know it by its brand name, Benadryl, or as the active ingredient hiding inside dozens of nighttime cold medicines and sleep aids. It is cheap, it is sold without a prescription, and the box practically promises you a peaceful night's sleep. What could possibly be wrong with that? Here is what that little pill is actually doing inside a brain over 60. Diphenhydramine belongs to a class of drugs called anticholinergics. Remember that word, because it is going to come up again and again in this video. Anticholinergic drugs work by blocking a chemical messenger called acetylcholine, which your brain depends on to form memories, hold focus, and stay alert. When you're young, your brain has plenty of acetylcholine to spare. After 60, your natural reserves are already lower. Block even more of it every single night with a sleep aid, and the effect adds up. Research published in geriatric medicine journals has linked regular diphenhydramine use in older adults to a noticeably higher risk of cognitive decline, along with measurable shrinkage in brain regions tied to memory. There's a second hidden cost too. Anticholinergic sleep aids don't give you real restorative sleep. They sedate you, which feels similar but isn't the same thing. Your brain moves through less of the deep sleep it actually needs to clean out waste proteins overnight, including the kind linked to Alzheimer's. On top of that, these medications slow reaction time and balance, which is part of why they're tied to a higher risk of falls in older adults, a danger that compounds everything else on this list. The tricky part is how it hides. Anything labeled PM, nighttime relief, or sleep formula almost always contains it. If you want something for allergies, ask your doctor about newer antihistamines like loratadine or cetirizine, which don't cross into the brain the same way. We'll talk about safer sleep options later in this video. Next, proton pump inhibitors, often just called PPIs. If you've been told to take a daily acid reflux pill and you've simply kept taking it for years without anyone suggesting you stop, you are far from alone. This is one of the most overprescribed categories of medication in the world, and the real problem isn't that people take it. It's that most were only designed for 8 to 12 weeks of use, yet millions of people stay on them indefinitely. PPIs work by reducing stomach acid, which sounds harmless enough. But your stomach acid does something important. It helps your body absorb vitamin B12 from food. B12 is not optional for your brain. A deficiency is clinically linked to memory problems, low mood, nerve damage, and a pattern of decline that can look almost identical to early Alzheimer's, so much so that doctors sometimes confuse the two. Large studies following tens of thousands of older adults have found that long-term PPI users carry a meaningfully higher risk of developing dementia compared to people who don't use them. Some researchers believe the connection runs even deeper, possibly affecting how certain proteins build up in the brain over time. What makes this one so common is that reflux itself often isn't a permanent condition. It can be triggered by weight changes, stress, certain foods, or even the natural slowing of digestion that comes with age. Yet once someone starts a PPI, it's rarely revisited. The original prescription was meant to last weeks. For many people, it quietly turns into years, then decades, without anyone stopping to ask whether it's still needed at all. If you're on a PPI long-term, talk to your doctor about tapering down, perhaps using a gentler medication as a bridge. Smaller meals, avoiding food late at night, and raising the head of your bed slightly can ease reflux naturally for many people. And if you do need to stay on a PPI, ask for your B12 and magnesium levels to be checked regularly. If you're finding this useful so far, type the word 8 in the comments. It tells me you're still here, and it helps this video reach more people who need to hear it. Next, medications for an overactive bladder. This one genuinely frustrates me, not because the medication is bad, but because of how little patients are ever told about it. An overactive bladder is real, it's uncomfortable, it disrupts sleep, and when a doctor hands you a prescription that promises relief, of course, you take it gladly. What almost nobody explains is that a drug like oxybutynin is one of the strongest anticholinergics in everyday use. It doesn't just calm your bladder, it crosses easily into your brain and interferes with the very same acetylcholine system responsible for memory and learning. Researchers studying brain scans of long-term users have found measurable shrinkage in the hippocampus, the part of your brain that acts like a filing cabinet for memories. A large study following older adults for years found that people using strong anticholinergic bladder medications for more than 12 months faced a dramatically higher risk of a dementia diagnosis, nearly 1 in 2. What makes this especially sad is how the early symptoms get explained away. Forgetting appointments, losing your train of thought, misplacing your keys, all chalked up to just getting older. Nobody thinks to question the pill. Many people in this situation describe a strange split. Their body feels fine, but their mind feels like it's wrapped in cotton. And because the medication is treating a real, embarrassing problem, they're often reluctant to even mention it, let alone consider stopping it. The encouraging news is that newer bladder medications like mirabegron work through a completely different pathway and carry far less risk to the brain. If you're on oxybutynin and you've noticed your thinking has changed, bring this up directly with your doctor. Now let's talk about benzodiazepines, a category that brings up strong feelings for a lot of people, and understandably so. Medications like diazepam, lorazepam, and alprazolam have genuinely helped people survive crushing anxiety, panic attacks, and sleepless nights. For many, they felt like a lifeline during the hardest moments of their lives. I am not dismissing that for a second. I'm simply asking you to hear the research. Benzodiazepines work by amplifying a calming brain chemical called GABA. They are remarkably effective in the short term. The concern is what happens when that switch stays flipped for months or years instead of weeks. Several long-term studies following thousands of older adults have found a clearly elevated risk of dementia among people who used benzodiazepines regularly over an extended period, with the risk appearing highest for long-acting versions that build up slowly in the body. I do want to be fair here, because this area is genuinely debated among scientists. Some researchers argue that early, undiagnosed dementia causes the anxiety and sleeplessness that lead to a benzodiazepine prescription in the first place, rather than the medication causing the decline. The honest answer is that both things are probably happening to different people, and nobody has fully untangled it yet. Either way, the pattern is worth knowing. Here's the biological piece. When GABA is chronically overamplified, your brain quietly turns down its own natural activity. Neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to form new connections and keep learning, begins to slow. Memory encoding gets sluggish. And here's the trap. Stopping suddenly can bring back anxiety and insomnia even worse than before, which makes the drug feel essential even while it may be working against you. This is exactly why so many people stay on these medications for years longer than originally intended. The relief is immediate and obvious. The cost shows up slowly, months or years later, looking nothing like a side effect and everything like a new diagnosis. Please never stop a benzodiazepine abruptly. That can be medically dangerous. Work with your doctor on a slow, supervised taper. Alternatives like buspirone for anxiety or cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia have helped many people reduce their reliance safely. Now, statins. I want to be careful here because statins genuinely save lives, and heart disease remains the leading cause of death after 60. For many people, a statin is the right call, full stop. But there's something your cardiologist may not have mentioned. Your brain is nearly 60% fat, and cholesterol isn't the villain it's often made out to be inside your skull. It builds the insulating sheath around your nerve fibers that lets signals travel quickly, and it plays a role in forming the connections between brain cells. Without enough of it, communication between neurons can suffer. This is actually one of the more debated items on this list, and I think you deserve the honest version. Some studies have linked long-term, high-dose statin use to memory complaints and mild cognitive changes, and regulators have required warning labels about reversible confusion and memory loss as a possible side effect. But other large studies have found statins to be neutral or even slightly protective against dementia, especially when they help prevent the small strokes that damage the brain over time. The truth right now is that the science isn't settled. What does seem fairly consistent is that some statins cross into the brain more easily than others. None of this means you should avoid a statin out of fear. For most people with real cardiovascular risk, the heart benefits clearly outweigh a possible, mild, and often reversible effect on memory. The goal here isn't to scare you off your statin, it's to make sure that if you do notice brain fog after starting one, you know it's worth mentioning instead of quietly assuming it's just age. If you're on a statin and you've noticed brain fog, ask your doctor whether switching to a different type, one less likely to cross into the brain, might offer the same heart protection with a gentler effect on your thinking. It's also worth having your CoQ10 levels checked, since statins can lower this compound your cells use for energy. If this has been useful so far, consider sending it to a friend or family member who takes one of these medications. A lot of people have simply never heard any of this, and a single share could be the reason someone finally asks their doctor the right question. Number 6. Amitriptyline. This one surprises people every time because it's rarely prescribed for what you'd expect. Doctors reach for it for nerve pain, migraine prevention, fibromyalgia, even stubborn insomnia. It's an older antidepressant that has been repurposed for decades, partly because its drowsy side effect is useful for people who can't sleep. But amitriptyline happens to be one of the most strongly anticholinergic medications still in common use today, even more so than several drugs developed specifically for bladder or allergy treatment. A well-known study following thousands of older adults over a 10-year period found that people with high cumulative exposure to strong anticholinergic medications, with amitriptyline among the biggest contributors, faced a substantially greater risk of dementia. And the damage wasn't only about high doses. Even small, steady doses taken consistently over years added up to meaningful risk. This is what researchers call cumulative burden, and it's a very different idea from the warnings most people are used to. We're taught to worry about a single big dose causing harm right away. Cumulative burden works the opposite way. A tiny dose taken every night for 10 years can quietly add up to more total exposure than a much larger dose taken for a few weeks. What troubles me most is how invisible this is. There's rarely a dramatic warning sign, just a slow, creeping fog, trouble finding words, losing the thread of a sentence, a growing difficulty holding complex thoughts, all quietly blamed on getting older. If you take amitriptyline for nerve pain, ask your doctor about alternatives like duloxetine or gabapentin, which carry a much lighter cognitive burden. For sleep, very low-dose doxepin has a gentler profile. For mood, modern SSRIs are generally a safer choice for an aging brain. Number 5. Antipsychotic medications. I need you to pay close attention here, because what I'm about to describe happens every single day in nursing homes and memory care units, and most families never find out. These medications were designed for serious psychiatric conditions like schizophrenia. They are powerful, and they come with a serious side effect profile. Yet today they are routinely given to older adults who are simply confused, restless, or hard to manage, not because they have psychosis, but because they're difficult to handle in an understaffed care setting. Regulators have issued a strong warning about this exact practice, citing increased risk of death in older adults with dementia-related symptoms. And still, the prescriptions continue. Families are sometimes told their loved one is simply calmer now, without ever being told what calmer actually means chemically. These drugs work largely by suppressing dopamine, the brain chemical tied to motivation, movement, and clear thinking. When dopamine is chronically suppressed in an aging brain, the results can include flattened emotion, slowed thinking, and faster cognitive decline. Large studies tracking older adults given antipsychotics for behavioral symptoms, rather than a genuine psychiatric diagnosis, have found significantly worse cognitive outcomes within just a year. If you have a loved one in care, or if you yourself have been prescribed one of these medications for reasons other than a documented psychiatric condition, ask direct questions. Ask why. Ask what non-drug approaches have been tried first. You are entitled to those answers. Number 4, paroxetine, often sold as Paxil. This one doesn't get nearly enough attention, and it really should. Paroxetine belongs to the SSRI family, the same broad group as sertraline and escitalopram, medications generally considered modern and gentler than older antidepressants. Most SSRIs leave your brain's acetylcholine system largely alone. Paroxetine is the exception. It carries meaningful anticholinergic activity that its siblings simply don't have, which puts it in a different risk category entirely. Research following older adults on paroxetine has found measurable declines in short-term memory and verbal recall within the first year of use, declines that weren't seen at the same rate in people taking other SSRIs at similar doses. Because of this, paroxetine appears on an official list of medications considered potentially inappropriate for older adults. The frustrating irony is that it's often prescribed specifically to seniors for anxiety and depression, the very group most vulnerable to its effects on the brain, partly because it's familiar, affordable, and has been on the market for decades. If you're over 60 and taking Paxil, ask your doctor whether switching to sertraline, escitalopram, or another SSRI might offer the same relief without this particular risk. Most people transition smoothly with a careful, gradual taper. Now we arrive at number 1, and I told you at the start this wasn't going to be a single medication. Here's why that matters more than anything else in this video. Every drug we've covered, taken completely on its own, might cause only a mild, easy-to-dismiss effect in some people. A little extra fog, a little extra forgetfulness, easy to write off as getting older. But almost nobody over 60 takes just one medication. The average adult over 65 takes 4 or more prescription medications every day. Many take 6, 8, even 10 or more, a mix of prescriptions, over-the-counter products, and supplements, often handed out by several different doctors who may have no idea what the others have prescribed. When multiple medications on this list overlap in one person, their anticholinergic effects don't simply add together. Research suggests they can compound each other. A large study tracking hundreds of thousands of older adults using a validated scoring tool that measures total anticholinergic load found that people with the heaviest cumulative burden faced a dramatically higher risk of developing dementia over the following decade, more than double the risk seen in people with a light burden. Picture a 70-year-old woman. We'll call her Dorothy. She takes a nighttime allergy pill to sleep. She takes oxybutynin for her bladder. Her doctor recently added a small dose of amitriptyline for nerve pain in her feet. And every morning she takes an over-the-counter heartburn tablet out of habit. Individually, each prescriber considers their own piece of the puzzle perfectly reasonable. Together, her combined anticholinergic load may sit in a range strongly associated with serious cognitive risk, and not one of her doctors has ever added it all up. Nobody in her life is doing anything wrong. The system simply isn't built to look at the whole picture at once. This is Dorothy. This is Helen. This might be your mother, your father, your spouse, or one day you. The medical term for this is called anticholinergic burden, and growing evidence suggests it may be one of the most under-recognized reversible drivers of dementia-like symptoms in older adults today. And I want you to really hear the word reversible, because that's the part that matters most. Drug-induced cognitive decline is, in many cases, something that can improve. When a careful medication review happens under proper medical supervision, families often see something close to a return of the person they remember. Memory comes back, personality comes back, the fog lifts. Your brain isn't a passive, fragile thing. It's adaptive, and it's far more capable of healing than most people realize when it's finally given the chance. So here's exactly what to do about it, starting this week. First, write down everything you take, every prescription, every over-the-counter pill, every supplement, even the ones you only use occasionally. Don't leave out the allergy tablet or the occasional sleep aid. Second, look up each item using something called the Anticholinergic Cognitive Burden Scale, a free, publicly available tool that scores medications by how much they affect your brain. A quick search will bring it right up. Third, book a dedicated medication review with your doctor. You can use this exact phrase: "I'd like to review my medications for anticholinergic burden." A good physician won't be offended by that. They'll respect it. Fourth, ask specifically about deprescribing, the careful, supervised process of tapering off medications that may no longer be necessary. It's a real and growing part of modern medicine for older adults. Fifth, if you're caring for an aging parent, bring this list to their next appointment yourself. Many older patients won't think to question a doctor, but a son or daughter asking on their behalf often gets a very different response. And sixth, if your doctor brushes off your concerns, it's completely fair to get a second opinion. You're not being difficult. You're being responsible for your own mind. A pharmacist who specializes in geriatric care can also walk through a full medication review with you, often for free, and can spot overlapping risks that a single prescriber might never see. Before you go, I want to hear from you. Which of these 9 medications are you or someone you love currently taking? Have you ever noticed brain fog, memory slips, or personality changes and never once connected them to a pill? Has a doctor ever brushed off your concerns about how a medication was affecting your thinking? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one, and this community reads them too. Sometimes the most powerful thing isn't a medical fact at all. It's simply learning you're not alone, and that what's happening to your mind might not be inevitable. If this video gave you something worth knowing, share it with someone today. Send it to your mother, your father, your spouse, a friend who's been struggling to remember things lately. The person who needs this most probably isn't going to stumble across it on their own. You might be the reason they finally do. Helen got her crossword back. Her son got his mother back. None of that happened because of luck. It happened because someone finally asked a question that should have been asked a long time before. What if it isn't aging at all? Your memory, your focus, your sense of who you are, none of it has to fade quietly without a fight. You now know the right questions to ask. Go ask them. Stay sharp, and I'll see you in the next one.